Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for the 6th installment in the Nation Roulette series. As I always say, if you have missed any of the episodes thus far, we've done Central African Republic, we've done Greenland, we've done Colombia, we've done Andorra, and we've done Fiji. A link to the playlist is in the description down below, but for the 6th episode in this series, we make our second venture into the continent which I call home, i.e. Europe, with a nation which football seemingly left behind by the name of Finland. Football, to put it lightly, is big business in Scandinavia. Despite club sides not having very much fortune on the continental stage, barring Malmö during the 80s and, to an extent, Copenhagen in recent times, Sweden and Denmark are both regular features at international tournaments. Norway have always had a fervour for football and are enjoying a golden generation at the moment with the likes of Martin Ødegaard and Erling Haaland, and even Iceland have managed to qualify for major finals in recent times. You may think, therefore, that Finland, much like their geographical neighbours, would have caught the footballing bug too, and thus been regulars at international competitions. Certainly, I would have presumed that they would have qualified for the absolute minimum, at least one, at some stage during their history, but the truth is actually quite the opposite. In fact, their first qualification to any major tournament was confirmed in November last year when they qualified for Euro 2020, now of course Euro 2021, after beating Liechtenstein 3-0 to finish second in their group behind Italy. Before that though, the national side had never graced a major international tournament, and technically speaking, they are still yet to. It's certainly a double take moment, but it's true. Perhaps it should come as little surprise that Finland's most popular sport isn't actually football, but it is in fact ice hockey. What may be rather more confusing though, is that not only are there nearly double the number of registered players for football than there are for ice hockey, with 115,000 compared to just 60,000 for ice hockey, and nearly 400,000 people register football as a hobby of some proportion, compared to just 195,000 for ice hockey. Indeed, the most popular sport amongst Finnish youths is football, with ice hockey coming all the way down in 9th. It's clear to see that this country is very confused with regards to its sporting priorities. What all of this doesn't mean to say is that the history of football in Finland hasn't been without incident, or at least some form of controversy. It arrived through British sailors in the 1890s, and after the rules had been translated from a Swedish handbook, the game became codified, and a national championship was held before a football association had been established. In 1907, they finally got around to making one, entitled, and you're going to have to bear with me for a second because it's going to be yet more awful pronunciation, but I'm going to try my best to get it as right as I can. It is entitled Suomen Palloliitto Finlandssportförbund. It's the best I can do. Before they were affiliated into FIFA the next year. Aside from a debut 5-1 defeat to Sweden in 1911, the early signs were promising as they managed to achieve 4th place at the 1912 Olympics, even beating Italy along the way. Although they did lose 9-0 to the Netherlands in the 3rd place playoff, so, swings and roundabouts. However, things would turn ugly in 1918, as Finland, still by this point part of the Russian Empire, descended into civil war, and the team was split in two, with some members siding with the right-wing faction and some with the left-wing faction. After the right-wing White Guard defeated the left-wing Reds, the members on the right wing of the team, that's obviously on the political spectrum, not on the pitch, formed the Finnish national team, and those on the left wing were occluded from selection. Players of the left-wing faction wouldn't be considered until 1939, and the teams wouldn't wholly unify until 1956, some 38 years after the conclusion of the Civil War. With this unification, football burgeoned in popularity, helped in no small part by increased funding from the government during the 1960s, and indoor football halls to allow football to be played all year round, removing the threat of the harsh winter conditions the country has often had to endure. Up until this point, they had attempted to qualify for every single World Cup tournament and European Championships, barring the first 2 editions of each tournament. They were mostly the whipping boys whenever they took part, not winning a single qualifying match in World Cup qualifying until the attempts for the 1966 finals in England, and only triumphing 32 times to date. They would sadly garner a reputation as nearly men, missing out on qualifying for both the 1980 European Championships and the 1986 World Cup by just a single point. But perhaps the most painful exit came during qualification for the 1998 tournament in France, as needing a win against Hungary to book their place in the playoffs, Tepi Moilanen scored a 90th minute own goal to give Hungary the draw that they needed to take that playoff place at the expense of the Eagle Owls. Around this time, players of a truly high standard started to make their way into the national squad, as Jari Litmanen, their highest goal scorer and appearance maker of all time, with 32 and 137, made his debut in 1989, and he would play his last game for Finland in 2010, making him the only player to play for a national team in 4 separate decades. Alongside him, Sami Hyypiä, who would go on to spend 11 glorious years at Liverpool, Jussi Jääskeläinen, a stalwart for Bolton who lasted 15 years with the Trotters, and Timo Tainio, who would end up at Spurs in the mid-noughties, were just some of the names being churned out by Finland at this time. Alas, this talented group of players would never yield any qualification for any tournament, and for most of its history, the national team has been the laughingstock of the country, even sinking as low down as 110th in the FIFA World Rankings as recently as July 2017. Even Roy Hodgson was drafted in 2005 to try to achieve that elusive spot at a major finals, but after failing to qualify for Euro 2008, he stepped down. Bad luck with Scandinavian countries would not be isolated to this one incident. However, a new generation of talent is starting to come through once again, with Lukas Hradecky, a goalkeeper for Bundesliga powerhouses Bayer Leverkusen, and Teemu Pukki, the one-month wonder in the Premier League, leading the way for Finland as they finally booked their place at a major international tournament for the first time in their history in November. Pukki scored 10 goals alone to power Finland to second place in their group behind Italy, but the country's going to have to wait a little longer for that historic moment, as the Euros were obviously delayed by a year as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Now we move into a discussion about the league structure in Finland, which yet again falls into the rather bizarre territory, so brace yourselves, it's about to get a little bit more confusing. Between 1908 and 1929, there wasn't even a league, but instead, the national champions were solely decided upon by a cup competition. Barring 1914, when some global war was taking place, the cup still managed to occur every single year, even in 1918 when the Civil War split the country in two. In 1930, a league called the Mestaruusarja was finally established, with 8 teams taking part, and yet again, only one season simply didn't take place, that being the 1943 season, in spite of the country being invaded by Germany between 1939 and 1940, and waging a war on the USSR between 1941 and 1944. Admittedly, the 1939 and 1941 seasons were abandoned one match day before its conclusion as a result of the war, which does seem a bit pointless to me. Like, why would you cancel a league one match day before it concludes? It doesn't really make any sense. You might as well just finish it when you can if you're so close to finishing it anyway. But I guess it ties in with Finland's mental football history as is. The 1944 season only saw 7 games played out of 14, and the 1940, 1942 and 1945 seasons saw the return of a cup competition to decide the national champions. The league then underwent a number of structural changes, with 1948 seeing 16 teams take part from across the country, but 6 teams were destined for the drop to cut the roster, and by 1950 the league was a settled 10-team tournament, although one final expansion to 12 teams came in 1960. Surprisingly, the attendance levels peaked during that decade, with the recorded average attendance coming in 1967 at 3,071, which, despite its growing popularity in recent times, has yet to be bettered. The league was rebranded in 1990 as the Futisliga, although as a result of a sponsorship with betting company Veikkaus, it is now known as the Veikkausliga. As a result of Finland's climate, football can only be played with consistency during the warmer months of the year, so the league, like many northern countries, runs from April to October. Each team, of whom 5 have natural grass turfs and the other 7 artificial, plays each other twice, before a split after 22 games sees the top 6 teams play each other once more, likewise the bottom 6. The league winners qualify for the Champions League first round of qualifying as a result of Finland's UEFA coefficient ranking, with the cup winners going into the Europa League equivalent, and the 2nd and 3rd place sides in the league both enter the new UEFA Conference League at the first round. After this, 4th to 6th place enter a tournament for the final UEFA Conference League spot, as well as the winner of the bottom half of the league, i.e. 7th place, with the eventual champions earning European qualification. There is also a relegation playoff between 11th in the Veikkausliga and 2nd in the Ykkönen, the Finnish 2nd tier, and only 1 automatic relegation spot. The most successful side come from the capital Helsinki, as HJK have triumphed a staggering 29 times in all, including 7 times in a row between 2009 and 2015. Behind them, HPS and the wonderfully named FC Haka have won the league 9 times each, although the former has been leagueless since 1957. I thought I would also showcase one of the best team names in the world, as the 1993 and 1996 league winners were a team called FC Jazz. Unfortunately, they haven't won the league since and are currently languishing in the 3rd tier. I hope they experience a renaissance soon enough. But that just about concludes today's video. Thank you very much for watching this edition of Nation Roulette on football within Finland. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. As I said at the beginning, if you've missed any of the other episodes thus far, the playlist link is in the description. And check out all my other videos if you hadn't seen them already, because trust me, they're top quality. And that's probably the cringiest thing I'm ever going to do on my channel, but I'm going to include it anyway. But thank you very much for watching in any case, and until next time, I'll see you then.